Your Honor, I rest my case.
But we had a contract!
But I found a loophole.
What loophole?
Sully! After waiting forever for Adolin's book, also known as Wind and Truth, we finally have answers to some of our burning questions left over from Rhythm of War. Though we were left hanging on some important loose ends, I'm looking at you, Ancient Spren of the Night, I felt largely satisfied with the answers we did get. There was, however, one very important question that was answered, and it was honestly a bit of a letdown. And yes, it involved a very important contract. This video is going to feature heavy spoilers for the Stormlight Archive up to and including Wind and Truth. Okay, let's start with a little refresher on what was actually agreed upon in the contract that set up the Contest of Champions.
Final terms are these. A contest of champions to the death. On the 10th day of the month Pala, 10th hour. We each send a willing champion, allowed to meet at the top of Urithiru, otherwise unharmed by either side's forces. If I win that contest, you remain bound to the system, but you will return Alethkar and Herdaz to me, with all of their occupants intact. You will vow to cease hostilities and maintain the peace, not working against my allies or our kingdoms in any way. Agreed, Odium said. But if I win, I keep everything I've won, including your homeland. I still remain bound to this system, and I will still cease hostilities as you've said above, but I will have your soul to serve me immortal. Will you do this? Because I agree to these terms. And I, Dalinar whispered, I agree to these terms.
There was a lot happening by the end of Rhythm of War. The coalition of Monarch's armies took back Emul, Urithiru was conquered by the Fused and then restored to the Radiance, and Navani bonded to the Sibling, becoming a very different type of bondsmith. It was in the midst of all of this that Rhazodium appeared to Dalinar, finally ready to come to an agreement, something Dalinar had been working toward desperately. As Rhaz was now on his back foot, the two rulers came to an accord that seemed to actually give the humans a chance. No matter which side won, Odium would still be trapped on Roshar. If Dalinar won, he would be given back Alethkar and Herdaz, and the war would end. If Rhazodium won, the Singers would keep their conquered lands, the fighting would stop, and Odium would get Dalinar's soul for eternity. So pretty intense personal stakes for Dalinar, but otherwise, humanity would still survive on Roshar. By the end of the book, as we all know, Taravangian managed to kill Rhaz with Nightblood and take on the Shard of Odium for himself. As he was gathering the power and acquainted himself with the knowledge of the Shard, Taravangian reviewed the contract by which his Shard was still bound. In his first moments of godhood, he found something terrible. Taravodium was confident that he found a loophole in the contract, something Dalinar and maybe even Rhaz had missed. With that crushing revelation, we received no more elaboration on the contract and we wouldn't get answers for 4 more years. During these years of waiting, there was much speculation on what may become of the contract, and everyone looked for what Taravodium's loophole might be. We did our fair share of theorizing at this time, but one of the main theories floating around seemed to have some actual weight in the community, and it revolved around Adolin. In Oathbringer, Adolin got some of the worst news of his life. He learned that his father was responsible for the murder of Evie, Adolin and Renarin's mother. It was a rage-fueled accident, and it almost broke Dalinar twice. After Odium attempted and failed to take Dalinar to his side by wielding this truth against him, Dalinar decided to just let the truth out. He published all of the facts in his memoir Oathbringer, and with that, everyone knew what had happened. Renarin took it bad, and Adolin took it worse. Much worse. Adolin, crushed by this new knowledge, felt a huge wedge divide him and his father. His father had found forgiveness for what he had done, but Adolin just found that his hero father was the reason he grew up without a mother. Adolin attempted to stay away from Dalinar after Oathbringer, and their paths seldom crossed in Book 4. When they did, there was a ton of tension, and it felt like something foul was brewing between the two. As resentment grew in Adolin, his connection to the Shard Odium became a very real possibility. The primary theory was that Adolin would be chosen as Odium's champion in the fight against Dalinar, leaving the Blackthorn with an impossible choice: kill his son to free Alethkar, or forfeit and let Odium win. Another similar theory at the time was that Odium would somehow use Elhokar's son Gavinor as the champion, giving Dalinar an even worse decision to make. This theory was quickly swept aside as the champion would have to fight willingly, and the odds of a toddler trying to kill his grandpa were low. Flash forward to December 2024, and Wind and Truth finally arrives. Day 1 finishes with Shallan and Adolin coming home and preparing for the journeys ahead. Lots of preparing. No. As Day 2 starts, the leaders of the coalition were all restless, and then Hoid goes crazy. While Jasnah was lying awake, angrily regretting her mattress choice, Hoid had been sorting through his memories, specifically the ones stored in his Nalthian breaths. While he was reviewing the past days, he found 3 minutes and 27 seconds of missing memory, very specific, and he knew that something was terribly wrong. He anxiously put up a protective steel bubble and tried desperately to determine what had happened. We know these memories were taken from him by Terravodium in the epilogue of Rhythm of War, after Hoid had discovered something was amiss in the new vessel. After minutes of panic, Hoid had finally drawn his conclusion. Something wasn't right with the contract, and just as Hoid started to piece together the puzzle, the Regals attacked. You see, at this point, I'm not sure we really know what the loophole was, or if Hoid even found the same one that Terravodium saw. What Hoid did find, however, was thanks to Frost. In Wind and Truth chapter 18, Hoid reveals his big find. If Odium captures the seat of power of a kingdom, he will take the entire nation, and Odium just launched 3 strikes for some of the most important kingdoms of Roshar, with the Regals commencing a 3-pronged assault on Thalena, Azamir, and Narak at the beginning of Day 2, we thought we truly found Terravodium's loophole. Odium could win almost all of Roshar before the contest, leaving the coalition exiled to only Urithiru if he won, or Urithiru, Alethkar, and Herdaz if he lost. Odium would keep all of the lands he conquered before the 10th day, win or lose. This was very sneaky and crafty, and it became one of the primary plot lines of Wind and Truth, but I can't help but feeling it was a little bland. Remember, we were waiting 4 years for the reveal of this loophole. Many theories were made and everyone was terrified of what Terravodium had up his sleeve, and it was immediately sniffed out by Hoid in the second part of the book. Not only that, but the loophole really wasn't that big of a reveal. We can assume that the coalition knew Odium would try to conquer the lands anyway, and this revelation only gave them just a little bit more insight into Odium's strategy. For such a big cliffhanger, this reveal was pretty lackluster in my opinion. So what if that wasn't actually the loophole that Terravodium found? Remember how unlikely the Gavinor theory was? Well, after getting trapped in the spiritual realm with grandma and grandpa-in-law / great uncle, Gavinor actually did end up becoming Odium's champion. Terravodium had tricked Navani into thinking she had rescued Gav as she was escaping the spiritual realm. He gave her a projection of the child while secretly keeping him hidden. This left Gavinor trapped in the spiritual realm for over a decade of his relative time, all the while thinking Dalinar and Navani had forgotten about him. To add to this, Odium repeatedly showed the child the moment of Dalinar beating up Elhokar, his father, in the war camps. Watching this scene out of context, this traumatized the boy even further, and he grew a resentment for Grandpa. After mere minutes back in the physical realm, Dalinar headed right on up to the Urithiru rooftop, thinking Gav was safe in bed, only to find the toddler was now in his 20s with a shard blade drawn. The dilemma was impossible. The fight would not be a contest for Dalinar if he actually tried, but could he really fight his own nephew / grandson? Would Dalinar really kill Gavinor, Gavilar's only remaining heir, just to free a couple of countries for his allies?
Hey guys, I know that Jasnah is technically an heir, and she's quite literally the queen of the Alethi, but you know what I mean. Alright, back to the video.
The coalition had already lost on seemingly every front, and now this? Eventually, as we know, Dalinar managed to find a way out. Gav lived, and Odium Retribution managed to succeed in his goals. So yeah, the contract was pretty messy. By the time the contest was over, the entirety of Roshar was flipped on its head. The coalition managed to save Azamir, and Venli conquered the Shattered Plains on a technicality. So nothing really went according to anyone's plan, and for such an important plot point, the whole thing was more confusing than gratifying in our opinion. I still think the loophole Terravodium saw was related to Gavinor, and that Hoid, while technically correct, was barking up a different tree. But what do you think? Are we wrong? Was the contract a sham? Is it all Hoid's fault? Probably. Let us know in the comments below, and subscribe if you want more Cosmere content. Colo?